Hello everyone, it's Micah. This isn't the video, this is the video before the video. I recorded the video you'll be watching today about a month ago, so I wanted to add a brief preamble, if you will. I will be turning comments off for this video due to the subject matter of the songs and my due to the fact that I have a day job, we'll put it that way. I am not really prepared for what it's going to take to responsibly moderate the comments that may come up on this video. So, but we'll see you next week with another number one, and I promise the comments will be turned on for that one and pretty much everything going forward. Enjoy the video. Hello everyone, it's Micah. Welcome to our Thursday reaction series where we're listening to recent number one Billboard Hot 100 hits. This week I'm going to do something I have not done before, and I'm going to react to two number one songs at the same time. Well, not simultaneously because I can't multitask that way, but we will cover two videos in the same video. And I have a specific reason for doing this, because these songs go together from an ideological standpoint, and I kind of want to get them out of the way all at once rather than drawing it out over two videos, because I'm not going to be pleased with a lot of what I hear. I have not heard either of these songs in their entirety, but I know enough about each of them to know that I'm probably not going to enjoy reacting to them all that much. But I am going to keep an open mind, and we'll leave it at that. In August and September of last year, these two songs, both country music songs, hit number one on the Billboard Hot 100. One of them was from an established artist. One of them was from a new artist in terms of from a chart perspective. I don't know very much about either artist, except I know about the social views of one, and I know about the virality of the second, and that's about as far as it goes. First one we're going to listen to is Jason Aldean, Try That in a Small Town. We're going to listen to that, and then we'll move on to Oliver Anthony music. This is Try That in a Small Town.
Try that.
Okay, so I'm going to divide my commentary on Try That in a Small Town into two distinct pieces. First is going to be from a musical perspective. From a musical perspective, I liked the song. I enjoyed the musicality of it. I enjoyed the arrangement of it. It was such a solid country rock, seamlessly put together instrumental. I totally believed the vocals, like the emotion behind the vocals, and I think that he did an excellent job conveying his message just uh, from a purely musical standpoint. I can't actually. I'm actually a little mad at myself for how much I enjoy the musicality of the song. It's a really good song from that perspective. However, and this is the second part of my reaction, and then we'll move on. However, since the video and the song itself is a very pointed social commentary, I can't just react to the music in the video. I'm forced to talk about what is being said in the song and in the video. It's interesting. We'll keep it at that. That the dichotomy that is explored in the song is lawlessness and crime and disrespect for everything that people hold dear. And on the other side of that coin is people who live in small towns. And this is how this agenda is propagated, by not overtly stating something that's asinine and absurd, but by implying it in a subtle enough way that people who aren't thinking critically accept it as such, even though it is completely asinine. There are lots of people who live in cities who are very respectful and both of their fellow citizens and of the sensitivities of their fellow citizens, and would not dare do any of the things that are being portrayed in the video or mentioned in the song. And there are some of the biggest creeps and criminals and lowlifes who don't have any regard for life that live in small towns. In other words, it doesn't matter where you live. You could be mean, you could be heartless, you could be unethical, and you can do these terrible things. That's the dichotomy isn't criminals and people who live in small towns. People try all kinds of things in small towns all the time. There's not large scale social unrest in small towns because there's not enough people there to propagate it. So it's like that's not the dichotomy that exists. The dichotomy that if you want to address people protesting and saying people protesting is bad, then you can say that in a song and that's just your opinion. But what's being said here isn't just an opinion about what you should or shouldn't do. This is like a sleight of hand where you're setting people against each other based on where they live. So it's sheer divisiveness for no reason whatsoever. In the imagery of the video is another sleight of hand where he's talking about. Well, no, actually, it's in the lyrics and in the video where he's talking about crime, and then he's talking about acts of protest, and he's making them equivalent to each other. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of burning flags, but it's an act of protest. You're not harming anybody unless you're burning someone else's flag. If you bought the flag and burned it yourself, that's a statement, an act of protest against the government, not equating it to carjacking an elderly lady. So by putting acts of protest in the same category as crimes against individual people, again, you're creating this false dichotomy on one hand, and you're creating this false convergence of actions and saying that one is equivalent to the other or is in the same boat as the other. And so much of the video footage there is of people protesting, and in some cases those protests getting out of control, of course, but some of it is just of people protesting and of police being called in to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. But what he's, by implication, what he seems to be saying is that protesting is bad. And well, I think that's a whole other topic, but whether that's good or bad is one thing, but saying it's the same thing as killing or hurting someone is just false. So there's a lot of ideologically troublesome things being propagated here underneath the surface. So it's unfortunate that such a well constructed and even maybe a well-meaning song fell victim to such terrible logic and such horrible divisiveness. So I really was not looking forward to reacting to that. I'm glad that at least on one level, I'm glad that I enjoyed the music that kind of took my mind off of what I was listening to in terms of lyrical content. So now we're going to move on to Richmond, north of Richmond, which it took me a few times to say that title to realize the symmetry in the song title. So I guess that's part of the cleverness of the song.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, 'cause the rich men. I wish politicians would look out for miners, and not just miners on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, north of Richmond. I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay.
I'm not sure what I was expecting because I have not heard any part of that song before, but I wasn't expecting such a stripped down record. His guitar playing was really good and super effective in complementing the message of the song. And again, just a stunning vocal performance. Uh, just like the other one, kind of didn't want to like the song, but it's it's got a strong melodic line. It has a very focused message, and it's got, of course, the stripped down instrumentation, just the guitar. And so, musically speaking, it's constructed very well. Um, I mean, it's harder to pick an ideological bone with that song, and it taps into that difficulty that we all kind of face living in a world that seems so much bigger than we are. Um, but I guess what I would say in response, and I feel less compelled to because the song kind of said what it said, and it didn't necessarily go after anybody other than politicians. At first, when I heard the song, I thought it was maybe talking about the North versus the South, but I think it's pretty clear what he means by north of Richmond is, well, it's just a play on words because it's Richmond and Richmond. But I think he just basically meant that place, sort of like Voldemort. You don't say, you're not. He's not saying Washington D.C. He's not coming out and saying, but then he just comes out and says politicians right after that. So it almost seems, pointless to be obscure or indirect about or oblique about your reference when you're going to just blurt it out in the next verse. But this is a song about how he feels that the government has overstepped. And I mean, it's a valid criticism. You never want the government to become too powerful. But the thing I say always about politicians and about government is that let's think about what the alternative is, and let's think about the consistency. What are the standards that we hold the government to, and do we hold ourselves to the same standard? How many of us scream about the government not keeping a balanced budget, but we don't have balanced budgets in our own households? When we talk about politicians being unethical, and we have rampant unethical behavior in our own backyard, things that we could speak out and do something about. It's much easier to point fingers at people who are in remote places that we don't have direct access to than it is to change the things that we have access to. And so, although I understand the frustration, I also feel like there's a bigger picture involved, and there's always going to be people who are in charge of things, and they're always going to be to some degree overwhelmed themselves because of the enormity of their responsibility, and they're also going to be in some ways unethical here and there. And I'm not one of those people who thinks every single politician is crooked, because politicians are people. All of us have moments of weakness, and it just gets amplified when you're a politician. And it could be, I don't want to get too much in the weeds with that, but I just don't think it's helpful or accurate to talk about politicians as this uniformly evil group of people, because the alternative to having politicians is anarchy. And sometimes it just sounds like these types of songs sound to me like you don't want any government whatsoever. And one thing I do vehemently disagree with in the song, of course, is the welfare piece. One of the biggest problems, I think, among people who have issues with the government is that they can't keep themselves focused on the government long enough to start pointing fingers at other citizens for things that they do that they feel are inconsistent or unfair. So I don't know. This one is more nuanced. I'm not as all fired against it. I definitely know that the people who picked up on the Oliver Anthony song are also people that I tend to disagree with politically. But there's nothing about that song. I won't say nothing, but there's not as much about that song that I really take inherent issue with. I think it's a perspective, and it's and the delivery of it in the musical context is also it's painful. It's painful to hear him sing and express these sentiments, regardless of whether you agree with it. It's just painful that someone is having that experience in their life that they feel so trodden upon. And and I think part of what music does is it helps us understand each other. And if we understand that Jason Aldean has this demonic image of people who live in the city, he paints all of us because I live in a city. I didn't my entire life, but I certainly do now, because I guess I found that the people in those small towns were trying me. I didn't feel like I was comfortable or valued there. It just wasn't the right environment for me. But for someone like him to feel that level of threat from people who, ironically, in reference to the other song from Oliver Anthony, are protesting the government, but you're just as liable to side with him and complain about the government yourself. I mean, there's just all kinds of avenues you could go down talking about all of this. So it's difficult for me to organize my thoughts around it. But ultimately, if we just strip these songs down and don't think about the politics behind them, and just think about hearing these people out, these two artists, hearing them out, and letting their opinions wash over us, not being uncritical about it, but letting us, but understanding where they're coming from. It can't hurt to let them into our consciousness, in the sense that we absorb what they're saying during the 4 minutes of those songs. Now, getting propagandized and believing things which are patently untrue or illogical is a whole other thing, and that's what I wouldn't want for the music to do. But it never hurts to take a second to live in that person's mind, and that's what good music helps us to do. And in the sense that it gives us a little bit of empathy, I would have to say that both of these songs are actually good music. What to the ends that they're being used for, however, it's a different story. And this, and it's part of why music is such an important part of society and such an important part of our lives, is that it often toes that line between things that we fully believe in and are inspired by, and things that we take a lot of issue with, or maybe ideas or ways of thinking about things that are even repugnant to us, but we still absorb them because they're compelling. It's almost like the real life version of a horror movie, where you are fascinated by something just because it's so distasteful. At any rate, I was hoping to make this a more concise review of these two songs, but that didn't happen. Maybe I can edit this down a little bit in post-production. But this was definitely a moment in pop music history where these songs were number one, very close to each other, within a few weeks, in August and September of 2023. And it was an interesting little piece of chart history, that these two songs plus the Zach Bryan song were all number one within a few weeks of each other. And sprinkled in here was Morgan Wallen. So there was like 4 country songs that were number one at the same time last year. It seemed like country music was taking over at one point, but we kind of have come back from that, and it's been more business as usual. Since both of these songs have pointed political commentary, it would be a very difficult, if not impossible, if not irresponsible, for me not to at least put in my 2 cents about that as well. If you like this video, please like it. If you feel so inclined, you can subscribe to the channel. Make music better.